Welcome, everybody. Um, it has been a crazy, crazy, crazy week, and seeing comments, had conversations literally all over the place. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to or what side of the spectrum. I think everybody's eyes have been looking in the same direction, and there's just so many emotions, and that's really why tonight we wanted to make sure we reach out to and just we want to get as many people on here to be able to share as possible. We're gonna start off with a prayer tonight, and I'll tell you again, but just now the know that you can send us a text message. We'd love to get a bunch of people on 2 to 3 minutes, just share what's been on your mind, what's on your heart, like where are you at, like how are you dealing with this. So 313-473-0499. Again, that's 313-473-0499. If you text us, we'll send you the information to get on the Zoom with us. Just have a conversation. So Dewan's gonna start us out with some prayer. We'll then get into some conversations and go from there.
Yeah. So you guys have heard us both say that we really, the big part of this show is honest conversation. But like, in order for that to happen, you have to bring the real version of yourself here, and we welcome that. We're not looking for people to agree with everything that we say, everything we think, or everything that we do. But we want you to be able to bring a real version of yourself here. But that means you're gonna have to be okay with us bringing a real version of ourselves. And I'm probably like most of y'all having all kinds of crazy thoughts and emotions. And what settles me best and gives me hope when I'm feeling hopeless is, petitioning the Father. So I'm going to do that to kind of like set us up, and open us up. So bear with us. Um, yeah, Lord, we are in desperate need. Um, Seems like people have been crying out to you for these subject matters for centuries. Um, and we still find ourselves in desperate need. It seems like people have been crying out to you, and you've probably heard this um, before, and we still see crazy stuff happening. Um, so we just say, would you hear us from on high? Um, would you respond like quickly? But we don't want to see people hurt. We don't want to see cities ruined. Where we have families that have lost loved ones, and like their blood and um, yeah, their tears cry out. Um, and it feels like in this space, people are quick to ask people of color to forgive, but we have yet to see consistent repentance. Um, and it's hard to have this discussion over and over again. Lord, we with all that we see and all that we experience, if I like take a real look and examine things truly, I can see that we have made progress, Lord, and you have answered some prayer, Lord, and you are not uh, like separating yourself for us because you don't care about these issues. We know that you're about justice. We know that you're about righteousness. Uh, and we're not even aware of all the things that we need and all the ways that we need you when it comes to this. So, Lord, I want to, um, Lord, just ask for forgiveness for myself personally, the places that I've allowed my mind to go, and the things that I've allowed myself to think and consider. Um, I ask for forgiveness. And Lord, would you just respond quickly, bring some real resolution, some real like unity, and some real justice. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Steve, do you want to share like what you've been experiencing, how you've been processing this? I have many thoughts, but like,
I think overwhelmed has been part of it. This has been an interesting intersection. We started talking about this after, like I shared personally about some of my own struggles in my own mind. Then we started talking. There's a number of things happened. Ahmaud Arbery stuff came out, and then we started having these conversations. And then like this week, it just seemed like so much, man. Like I made myself watch, and I know you didn't. I made myself watch the whole video. And video is like 8 minutes long. He stops responding at all. I mean, like he's unconscious, if not gone, dead. 3.5 minutes. It's 3.5 minutes after that the officer keeps his knee in the same position. Like, and people are screaming, yelling at him, check his pulse, check his pulse. And there's 3 other police officers. You can only see 2 of them in that video, and 2 other ones in that video. The one you only see really at the beginning, and you see that he's on the back of he's on the lower portion of George. And I just with everything else, like I'm like, how are we here? How are we here? Yeah. That's where I'll start. I'll pass it back to you for now.
So, combination of all that's happened, and it's frustrating. It's crazy. So my mind is all over the place still. Like my mind has not stopped working on, like thinking about this, thinking about the way I'm seeing people respond, like thinking about conversations that I've had with several people about the way they're feeling, and my mind is just spinning, and I haven't had any peace. The first thing that jumped out to me was the displays of power, right? It was like, officers like sitting on his neck, and it felt like he was posing the way that you see people pose when they've been hunting, right? And they've made a deal, right? That's what it felt like to me. Watching Amy make a threat to Mr. Cooper, who was there bird watching, and then what I'm hearing is him having the audacity to say something to her, right? Like just the audacity of him to say something to her, like, I will threaten your life, right? Is what I heard her saying to him, because she's in New York. She said, I'm going to tell them that I'm being threatened by a Black man or an African-American man, right? And using real specific coded language. And then the way that she took her voice when she wasn't getting the response that she wanted and made it seem like she
that was crazy. Like that was crazy. And
yes.
So she's now 20 feet further from him than she was when she was pointing the finger in his face, and like hysterical, absolutely hysterical. Keep going, man.
What struck me was that, one, like, if he does not have the video footage, and if he's there when the police arrive, right? Like what happens? You know what I mean? It's like by the time anybody figures out that she was lying, right? Like we potentially have another Emmett Till situation on our hands, right? And just for people to walk around with that type of power at any given moment, that like somebody can take something like that, and because I asked them to follow a rule, they can threaten my life, and they possess that type of power, that infuriates me. Like that, like just makes me, I don't allow myself to be scared, when really fear is kind of like the emotion that you walk around with. But to combat that, it makes me angry.
Yeah.
So the frustrating part is I make myself channel that anger and not express it, right? So like I don't necessarily have a place to like really release that emotion, because I make myself like have self-control. Like you've heard me say, and many people have heard me say, that I am an angry Black man. In spite of what you see when you interact with me, I'm always an angry Black man, and I make no apologies for that. So I know that that's a title that Black people walk around not wanting to be labeled, and people think that they can label you that, and like me, in other words, discredit like what you're getting ready to say. But it's like, no, like I am always that, right?
You're like Bruce Banner in the Avengers.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't turn into this like out of control beast, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm always a controlled beast, if you will, right? So like when I use the term beast, like it's intentional. Like I like a little bit of like shock value, but like I'm always working to try to create solutions to these problems, and I always want us to be able to look ourselves in the mirror. But tonight, like I kind of want to hold a mirror to America, and fortunately or unfortunately, like I am an American, right? And that's probably the first time I've heard myself say that in a long time. But we just have so much work to do, and trying to figure out how to really keep a steady pace in the area where I see is my work lane. In times like this is challenging. I do want to talk about, and Ralph, just let us know when we got somebody that's ready to jump in. Please, like jump on, text the number so you can get the Zoom information, because we really want to hear your voice tonight. But I want to talk about something that I've been seeing happen, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives. I actually talked to somebody that works for the city of Detroit today, called me frustrated because he's talking about outside agitators.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that they actually identified some people from Ohio that came in with ice coolers full of rocks and bricks. And what they noticed was that these group of guys, they also had radios, so they were well organized.
Wow.
And they would say things to people that were hyped in the crowd, and talk some of the young 20-year-old Black guys to go up to the front, and then they would stay back. And as they were like having a confrontation with the police, they would start hurling bricks, right, towards the police. And like seeing that, like that just adds another layer of complexity with all that you're up against and all you're trying to express when you're at these protests. And I haven't been to a protest myself personally during this time. Like I've been to many protests in the past, but like I haven't participated in any of these. Seeing So here's one of the things that I've noticed, and I want to speak to a little bit, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. So on Tuesday, I heard like black people and white people like calling out their white friends that have been quiet, right?
Yep.
Heard black people saying, "Look, if you silent on this one, I'm done. Unfriend me, lose my number. I don't want to deal with you anymore because you being silent is you being complicit, you being in agreement with what's happening at this point." So there was a line drawn in the sand, and I'm not tripping on that, right? Like you know what I mean? Um, like I'm always like watching like my white friends to see where they're at, and I often tell them, look, like at any given moment, like you can fade out and you can opt out of this mission. You know what I mean? Like you have that option. I don't, right? I'm committed to this for life, right? Um, so seeing that conversation happen, and then at many of these protests, I saw lots of white people like marching, protesting with black people. So yesterday, I heard one of the leaders that organized a peaceful protest in Detroit say that you know there were outside. So he used some code language, and if I had the brother's number, I would reach out and call him, and I'm going to try make an attempt to, right? Because I'm not attacking him because he's not the only person I heard take this perspective. But I am attacking or challenging, I should say. I'm not attacking, but I'm challenging this perspective, right? So with
which one are you talking? Which one are you? Which perspective? You're talking about the.
So this perspective, I'm gonna give it to you.
Okay.
He said we had outsiders protesting that were agitators, and he said I don't want to call them outsiders. I want to call them white supremacists, right?
Okay.
And what he did was with that type of language, like what I was hearing, and I'm wondering if some of the white people were hearing, like, wow, did I just go from being an ally that was challenged and invited to walk alongside of you and protest with you to being called a white supremacist, right? So my concern is that we're giving mixed signals, right? Now, on the flip side, when I'm out, because I mean, many of you have heard me say to white people, even on one of these shows, that I think that your position during like these Black Lives Matter protests is alongside of them, actually in the front, because like police are going to be more reluctant to attack white people than they will black people, right?
Yeah.
So as I've said that, I think to not, my concern is if you're coming to these rallies and you are a real ally, you're definitely wanted there. But if you come into to a rally or protest and we can't see your face at all, and you got your arms fully covered so we can't see your tattoos, then that's a problem. Now everybody has on masks because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I get that. But if you're covered from head to toe and you run around spray painting stuff or tossing rocks at a peaceful protest, and I'm talking more about Detroit now, right? Like that is a problem, right? Like your whiteness that serves as a potential protector from police brutality is not even on display properly, right? Because you're so covered up that nobody can really see who you are, and that's a problem that like needs to be addressed. So there's so many layers. This is so nuanced, and I think that we need to get stuff out on the table so we can come up with a real legit plan on how to like address some of these things moving forward. So that's some of my thoughts. So, but I'd love to hear yours on that. That is the white community receiving mixed signals?
I think they always have. I think it's just more. I mean, there's more. It's more kind of critical and crucial right now. I think that there's always been this. I mean, you've talked about that. You've talked about the challenge of entering this space as a white person. Just to, like, it's a really you tread a really thin line, even with good intentions, because you can, saying the wrong thing can get you like pounced on pretty quickly. Like, rather than be like, look, so like a lot of people will just rather lay back where it's safe, and like, at least I'm not contributing to the problem, is the thought process. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna kind of do my best in my own little lane to make sure I'm not contributing. The problem with that is that, there's so much opportunity missed for growth and learning. Like, I think just that, like, when white people are resigned to that, I think there's so much that's missed in terms of inability to actually be effective at, like, moving this conversation forward and the needle forward. Yeah, and so now I think you're right, and I think it's interesting too. I've really appreciated perspectives. I've really appreciated the broad perspectives as I've been able to kind of read through different comments on social media and just see where different people are coming from, because it always, at some point, like, I'll have an initial take on something, and then I'll hear somebody else say something, I'll hear somebody else say something, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I never thought about it from that perspective. So I think being able to just talk kind of helps us. Like, so for instance, what you're saying right now, like, you being in the place to, like, how your mind works, to be able to say, like, okay, so this, be able to say clearly, like, this communicates this, but then this communicates something else. Like, that gives us all opportunity to pause and reflect, like, oh, like, I'm kind of doing that. So yeah, I think we need very clear ways. Like, if we want, like you said, if we want white people to be on board, it's like, look, like, that needs to be clear. Like, what are we talking about here? So I think we got a caller on, ready to jump on. So yeah, go ahead. We got 2 to 3 minutes for people to share. We want to get as many people on as possible. Again, if you want to be on, the number is 313. Send a text message, 313-473-0499. We want everybody. We want people to be heard, and we know there's a lot going on here. So, Ralph, are we good? Keep talk. Okay, so I think Nick's on. Nick, 2 to 3 minutes. What do you want people to think about? Where are you processing, first of all? And, like, what do you want us to be thinking about in this conversation here? You're on mute.
Take Nick's mute off.
Am I good now?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Go ahead. Welcome back.
All right, Steve. Thank you. What you mentioned, Steve, earlier before is there is a definite disconnect between people that are white and getting signals from black people about what they need to do. When DeJuan mentioned that kind of silence is complicity, really drives a narrative that it's a mixed signal for what kind of white person, what kind of comments need to be made in order to be friendly, in order to be safe, in order to be genuine. And when the problem becomes, if I'm ignorant and I'm unable to process things, and then I say something that sounds callous, or I say something that appears to be wrong, like, apparently that shuts me out of a lot of conversations. This past week, I've had a lot of friends that have shut me out of conversations because of this. And these are my white liberal friends. This is the thing that really bothers me the most, because it's like saying, all right, we have free speech in this country, but when it comes to the friendship and value of trying to change someone's mind, immediately censoring them, silencing them, putting them out of the conversation, that's going to create more racists. I'm angry right now because apparently I'm left out of the conversation. I'm as Irish as ever. I'm freckled. Obviously, everything I say gets looked through the lens of he's a white person. So not to say that it's racism in a reverse effect, but it is because of a lens that I have, that I am perceived to have, that becomes the problem of me trying to get help if I want to learn. So as many books as I can read, as many podcasts as I can listen to, it seems to me that no matter what I say, no matter where I make a comment, I am the callous one. I am the one that gets shut out. I'm not welcome in these kinds of spaces. So if someone that's older than me, that's more ignorant, or someone that's younger than me and ignorant, they're going to look at this and say, I don't want anything to do with it.
Man, thank you for that. We're gonna respond to it offline. I appreciate you coming back on, Nick. Have a good night. And so I'll just start. Yeah. I'll start responding, and you will see. So this is our third or fourth week doing this. So you're still going to see some technical difficulties as you see Nick is in multiple places, and some people are trying to figure out if he's Dewan or I'm just kidding.
Oh goodness.
But we're working on it. Anyway, so we can. What I want to say to that is I think it could be like I actually think how we approach this conversation with like mainstream white America in general is fundamentally flawed. I think we've done a good job to figure out what the components are. We've done a great job of figuring out terminology that works for people that are quote unquote woke. When you're talking about building bridges to people that you would like to see move the needle, like the type of language that we use around this is not building bridges, it's actually shutting people out. And Dewan and I talk a lot about this, and that's one of the reasons why we want to I don't know if Dewan's I see Dewan, he's not up on the screen yet, but that's one of the reasons why we want to have these conversations, because we want to be able to like have people come to a place where it's like, look, what is really happening up here? Because if you can't share what's going on up here, and we're just going to shut you down. And I said, like, I'll say this over and over, like the frustration of not being able to speak, not being able to be heard, that's real for everybody. So I get the fact that like, hey, now it's your turn. You don't like it, do you? Like we got to understand what our goals are, and two, who our audience is. So if you're happy just preaching to the choir, let's keep doing the same thing. Like if we want to see something different happen, let's like reassess like our tactics and figure out like, okay, this isn't working. I'm getting like we're having the same conversations with the same type of white person over and over and over. Like, do I want to move the needle like on a broader spectrum? Maybe we need to do something different. That's all I'm saying. And so I know this is going to be pretty unpopular. I don't like the term white fragility. I don't like the term white psychosis. Like these things, and you can have like, you know, her stuff, like she's saying a lot of things we've been saying about race for the past 20 years. And she put a new terminology on it, and it's fine. Like so much of it is true. I just don't think entering into the conversation with the average white person, you're going to help like bring them along. Like I look at things like Paul in Athens. He sees all this pagan mess, and he's like, hey, I see you guys are very religious. And he starts there. He starts on the things that we can agree on, and then we eventually get to the point, let me explain to you this kind of stuff. And I think once we can start getting to the point where we build on people and be like, look, here's where, like, I got people that say crazy stuff to me, like, and say all kind of stuff to me online, because I post a lot of videos on TikTok, and I got like black nationalists that say stuff, and I got white supremacists that say stuff, and I got everybody in between. And there's always room to be misunderstood. And it is always my goal to bring it back to empathy and humanity and love every time. I don't care who you are. I don't care what, you know, so us shutting down, you know, white people because they said the wrong thing. That's the other thing, man. I've been the white person in so many rooms, and I've heard so much ignorance from so many different people groups. It just doesn't bother me the same way it bothers some people. So we're professionals on white people because they're the majority, but like there's a lot of lack in some other areas. But Dewan, what are your thoughts on that? And I know we got to get some. Do we have somebody else lined up? I know Hemp was in. It seemed like Hemp was in the thing.
So if Hemp is in, go move him up and start bringing him in. I'll continue to talk about where I think you kind of left us. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, right? It's like it's what you said. If you know, if I'm trying to get someone to agree with me, right, then like I'm using an approach that's only going to speak to people that agree with me, like that. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand, because oftentimes I hear people sounding like they're talking to a person that they want to understand where they're coming from, but you start off with a smack upside the head. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the I don't know how old people are watching this, but I can remember an episode of The Cosby Show, right? And Odessa had brought her husband to the family, and they was like going off on him. They was tripping. They was treating him bold, and he was a decent dude, right? And he was trying to get them to understand that he was a decent dude, and he could understand why they were tripping on him that way. So Cliff gave an analogy, and he was like, "Yo, what's going on?" Like, he's like, "What's your favorite meal?" The guy told him his favorite meal. He said, "Okay, I prepared that meal for you. I'm getting ready to serve it to you, and I give it to you on a garbage can lid, right? Like, do you want it?" And I think oftentimes, like, you have something to say that the other person really needs to hear, and it could even be healing for them and you, and further us in the cause, in the conversation. But you're not concerned with the way you present it, right? Because you feel like it's so important, and you're
100%.
pissed off anyway. So your delivery is, you don't take any thought into that, right? So like, if you have something that I desperately need,
and
right?
You kind of like it to be harsh. You kind of like it to have an edge.
Because really, it's like we really want to fall out, right? And I get it. You know what I mean? Like Steve doesn't like the term white fragility, right? It's like, I don't like the fact that like white men are perceived and paint this vision, have been painted as the brave hero everywhere. But when it comes to having this conversation, they scared of it. Like, right? Like, you gotta tiptoe through the tulips to keep them at the table because they want to run, they want to do this. Like, I don't like that, right? But like, I care enough about moving forward. I know that in order to have this discussion, they need to be at the table. So if it means I need to package it and present it in a way that's palatable, not weak, not watering anything down, but that it's palatable, that we can keep them engaged, right? Then it's worth me saying something in such a sophisticated manner that they will be able to receive, right? Yeah. That at the end of the day, that's what's most important. Not that I say it, but that it's received and that it's heard.
100%, yes.
When I'm having a conversation with somebody, right?
And that's so, like, that's most of us though. Like, and I'm not even like, that's what I want to say. And that's I want to bring it back there because that is most of us in a conversation. I care a lot more about what I have to say than like how you receive it.
Yeah.
Just do.
Yeah.
That's in every conversation. I'm gonna check some of the comments.
Ralph, let me know when we had the next person on. To that note, I'll give another analogy that I like to use when we're talking about this, right? And what I normally share with people is, look, if I'm falling on hard times and like I'm in a rough position financially, and you are in position to help me, if you come to me and you have $100 bill that you want to give to me, and I'm in dire need of it, if you ball that $100 bill up and throw it and hit me either in my face or my chest, I'm gonna let that $100 bill fall to the ground and stay there, and I will not pick it up, no matter how bad I need it, right? But if you take that same $100 bill and you press it into my hand and say, here, like, I want you to have this. I know you need it. Bless you. And I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to take it and receive it the way that you intended and because I really need it, right? Yep. So oftentimes, again, you have something that somebody needs. They need to hear. They need that other perspective. But you're taking it, you're balling it up, and you're smacking them in the face with it. And you walk away talking about them because they didn't pick it up off the ground and use it, right? Like, so who's really crazy, right? I'm just saying.
Hey, so that's the conversation we don't want to have. And that's the thing, like, when you talk about talking about them, you actually feel really good about that conversation when you're like, back at home court, and it was like rehashing how the game went. You're like, and then I said this, and she was like, and then I was like, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
And you should have seen the look on her face, and you're happy about that. But like,
and you have somebody cheering you on.
Oh, 100%. Oh man, I wish I would have been there. Yeah. I wish I could have seen the look on her face. Like, right, what is the goal? Like, what are we trying to do here?
Yeah. So we have another caller on. I'm not sure what, I don't have a name, but I'm hoping that they come with some something really powerful. I'm leery when I can't see a face and I don't have a name. But we got Ralph on standby in case they get
Stacy.
Stacy, you are up. Unmute Stacy. Stacy, can you hear me?
Hi, Dwan. I can hear you, and it's actually Sarah Ray, so it's pretty funny.
Oh, Sarah Ray. Who are you talking about? Sarah Ray, I am so sorry.
Stacy.
Like that, Sarah Ray, charge that to Ralph. I should have actually recognized your number. Go ahead. I got a message that
That's
you had,
okay.
You had a great question.
I think it's okay. We have a brief giggle. Hi, Dwan. So Steve, I haven't met you yet, but I've known Dwan for many years. And Dwan knows I'm not easily intimidated. So the fact that I'm shaking right now probably tells you just kind of where my heart is with all of this. And, so I am a psychologist by trade, and my specialty is trauma. And so I literally sit with people in the darkest times of their lives. And my job is knowing when to say the right things. I mean, my entire living is based off of sitting with people and saying the right things in the midst of immeasurable, unimaginable suffering. And part of my training as a psychologist is to really examine my own privilege. And so we're really forced to take an introspective look. And I understand it's hard that folks can't see me. I don't know why that is. I'm not very technologically savvy, so that's probably why. But
try this, Sarah Ray. Are you on the phone?
I'm on the phone and I'm on the iPad. I've got all the things happening.
So touch your if you're calling us through Zoom through your phone, touch the screen once and see if you see the little camera icon, and then touch that.
It looks like it actually just looks like a phone dial. Like it looks like I literally just called you on like a. All right,
well, maybe you did. Maybe you did call in. So don't. I'm sorry for jumping in.
No, it's okay. I don't think my iPad's going to let me connect my face either. But just to give listeners an understanding, I'm a Caucasian woman. I am 33. I had to think about that for a minute. And my background is obviously as a doctor. That comes with its own degree of privilege and affluence. What a lot of folks don't know unless they get to know me is that I grew up in a predominantly African-American neighborhood outside of Metro Detroit, and grew up in a family that did not support women being educated, and really kind of broke through my own barriers. And so I always really struggled with this idea of white privilege because I felt like it really diminished the own kind of barriers that I had to break through as a woman to become educated. And it's really been in the last probably 6 months that I've really started to understand that the idea of white privilege doesn't mean that it's negating. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't mean that it's negating the struggles that I went through to get where I'm at. It just means that my skin tone was not a factor. And so that's been something that I've kind of grown in awareness of. But I think the thing that I'm running into a lot right now, and which is what I texted in, is the idea of white guilt. And how do I, or how do other listeners effectively reach out to folks? So I've reached out to folks throughout the week that I am close to, and just said, like, I stand with you. It's hard for me because I'm in California, so I'm very far away from my home and my people. And so just sending a text and saying, I just want you to know I'm here. And this is not okay. And I've had mixed reception of that. Some folks have just said, thank you. I know that. Other folks have said, I've received a lot of backlash about, like, how dare you reach out to me and, alleviate your white guilt on me, and it's just different things. So how is the best way? And I know it's going to be different from person to person, but as someone, like I said, who makes a living knowing the right thing to say, I have sure said a lot of the wrong things this week, and I don't know where to start to find accurate education or accurate, training. And like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's really hard. And I think just the repeated willingness to step into that space says something in and of itself. But how do we, as allies, walk that really fine balance between being an ally and alleviating white guilt or having this perspective of white privilege?
So I'll take a stab at it and give you my 2 cents, Sarah Ray. Thank you so much for that question. Ralph, if we got anybody else in, all right, cool. So my thoughts are this, right? It's messy. It is a mess. If you enter into this space, like you're going to catch people at different times. So you're going to have to extend some grace. You're going to have to, I'm not even going to say like have thick skin. I'm going to say like take some of those hits and some of those blows. And then like come back to the table. It's hard, but oftentimes what you'll find is like people don't even know it, but there's a hazing process that people will put you through, right? Because they want to know where you stand. They're not even aware that they're doing that, right? But oftentimes you're gonna get hazed, and people want to know, like, sometimes you'll unknowingly like say something that's a trigger for somebody that they've heard before, and you might get a response that they wish they could have gave to somebody else that really offended them once upon a time, right? So, like,
I think that makes perfect sense.
There's a lot of times when people, but especially Black people, like somebody said a little slick joke in the workplace or somewhere else, and we're laying in bed at night saying, "Damn, I wish I'd have said this to them," right? And you like sitting there waiting on them to say it again because you got a prepared response, right? And then if somebody else comes in and says that or takes them to that spot, you're going to catch all that smoke that was meant for somebody else. And sometimes, like, that smoke might be meant for you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's tricky.
Yeah.
I would say what I want to challenge, like, white people to do is to consider this, right? Consider that white guilt is a real thing, right? Because if you can feel very proud of this country and be a very proud, patriotic American, you should be able to own some of the backlash. One of the things I often hear, I've heard white people say, "I've never owned a slave." And I know that's true. Everybody knows that that's true, right? But if you can celebrate like how nice this country is and what this country means to you, and I'm not talking to you directly, Sarah Ray, but I'm not talking to you either, right?
I understand.
So if you can like celebrate all of that, you should be able to take some level of responsibility for the way that this country became great, at least in whoever's mind that believes that this is a great country, right? Because everybody does not believe that, and everybody doesn't feel that. So I just say that, like, it's a double-edged sword. This country that we call the land of the free and the home of the brave.
No, and I think it's an excellent point, especially, something else that that listeners may not is that I'm married to a disabled veteran. And so it's hard to find that balance between pride and patriotism, but then also recognize that it's not all red, white, blue, and sparkles, and it's not all glory. That there is a history that's very real and that's very, I think, mistaught incorrectly. And I think I had a quick follow-up question for you. With my work with trauma and with my experience in the fostering world, oftentimes I kind of approach the same thing, and please, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of approach my conversations in this realm with the same way that I do compound trauma. the same way that I would with people that I've had in foster situations before, of just being really consistent and continuing to show up and continuing to be the absorber of that pain. Because I think, like you said, there's a hazing process. And I think that there's very much a trust that needs to be built. And I think there's very much a authenticity that needs to be displayed. But I always wonder if that's just my work coming through, or if that's my heart coming through, because sometimes it's hard to separate it out. And I, again, don't want it to be offensive and, you know, quote unquote, be the little psychologist coming in to fix the problem.
So I'll say this. I'm not going to pretend to know, to be that smart to know the difference between your head and your heart, right? Like I'm not going to be the all-knowing like dude that has a Facebook, YouTube talk show co-host with Steve. What I will say is this, right? What you will be required to do entering into that space is not come into that space as an expert, right? That's going to be a requirement, right? Like it is important that you come being an expert on Sarah Ray and not Sarah Ray, the psychologist, right? That's going
Absolutely.
to be, other than that, I can't tell you how to know the difference between where you're coming from. Steve, did you have anything you want to add? Ralph, you got to get Sarah Ray out of here. Sarah Ray, thank you for calling. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Next
Thank you for calling in. I'm going to speak to a couple things that she said. One, Sarah Williams, it said on Facebook in response to that, we can't really receive anything until we somehow trust the giver. And so there's going to be, you know, as you're connecting with people, there's going to be varied levels of trust. But then also to your point, Dewan, it's like there isn't a Black American profile. There isn't a white American profile. Like there's a diversity in a spectrum, and so people are going to take things differently, which it goes back to when you talk about the your irritation or whatever it is with white males being kind of treated and projected as this, but then you can't like have this challenging conversation. I think that's a key part. If to be in these messy conversations, the mindset is super important. Like we have to get to the place where like we don't live or die by someone's response to us. And what I'm not saying is like we just ignore how people respond and we just like put that completely on them. But it's like, look, like I'm going to make mistakes in life. I'm going to make mistakes in what I say to my wife. I'm going to make mistakes in what I say to my kids and everybody around me. And in this space, I am definitely going to make mistakes. And I'm going to make another one and another one. And that's all. We're all going to say things and do things. Like one of the things I really appreciate you are always looking in the mirror. Like, man, I had this conversation. I said this. I really like in retrospect, I should have said that. Like, you know, I realized this. And so like, that's one of the things, but we have to remove judgment of ourselves as and like this emotional kind of like the guilt and the shame. Like we have to do that work. And I think that has to be done. Like the mindset stuff, before we even come to the table, we should be working on that. Before we don't even need to talk about race to be working on that. Like we need to be able to do that like in our whole lives, because when we bring our broken self to the table in this conversation, it gets like, it's not like we ever get completely whole, but like things get magnified and exacerbated in this space because it's such a touchy space. So if we're already feeling kind of, you know, in other aspects of our life about that, like that's going to pour over like in crazy ways when we talk about race. So you have to be okay. You have to be okay with like, you reach out with good intentions and be like, shoot, she was pissed off that you said that. Like, you know, okay, I'll make a note. Like next time, Sherry's not on my list. But like Alvin, he really appreciated it. So I'm going to make sure when something like this, I'm going to call Alvin. Like that does, you know what I'm saying? It's just like there's a diversity, there's a complexity that we have to appreciate. And also it's learning and growing in all of it. For me, it's finding people like I had such transparent conversations in college. And I want to get to Vince in a second. Thank you for being on, Vince. But I had such transparent conversations in college. That was such a gift to me because people would say things and ask things about white people. And I could say it was a free exchange. And the exchange was just like, it was just for the love of it. You know what I'm saying? Like there weren't any lofty goals. We weren't trying to change the world. It's just like, how do we get to know each other better? I have these questions like about you and vice versa. And so there was this free exchange, a non-judgmental exchange. And it's like that, like when you can find 1 to 2 people of like someone that doesn't look like you, that you can have those conversations with, that right there is one thing that will help you have like all your conversations with everybody else be better. Because there's a lot of people won't be that person, but that person can help you like get to a place where you're like your growth, like more than a book, more than anything else, like that relationship will help skyrocket your understanding in this place. So Vince is on. All right.
Am I live? You guys hear me?
Thank you for being on here, Vince.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for allowing me some time to share my thoughts. I just stumbled up on you guys. I'd never seen your live before, and immediately I was drawn to the conversation because I just started a live stream show myself, and the topic, of course, is the topic of the day, what's going on in America as it relates to African Americans. And I have been, over the last couple days, it's like really not even something that I necessarily wanted to do. It's just this burning passion that I want to get a message out to people in regards to this Blackout Day 2020. And so let me start first by giving a kind of a preface or a disclaimer. Number one,
for people who don't know, can you kind of like put some context to the blackout?
Oh yeah, so I believe the date. I know the date is July 7th, 2020. There is a mass communication going out to particularly African Americans in the United States to not spend any money anywhere. Don't buy anything online. Don't go shopping. Don't go to a restaurant. Don't spend any money. We're blacking out on July 7th, 2020, to send a message that we have some buying power, and this is what it would look like should we decide that we're going to unite and not spend any money. And that would be our way of hitting the pockets of our oppressor. And so I think we start there, recognizing that this is all still a different form of oppression. So whereas before we dealt with being oppressed and enslaved with chains on our hands, now it's mental and it's physical through economics and education, just like it was back in the day where, and I don't want to go off on tangents, but, when we talk about not owning anything and not being in any position of power, yes, we have more people, in the White House and in Congress and things of that nature. But by and large, we don't have the representation in terms of control and power in positions of healthcare, banks, grocery stores, transportation, on and on, where we can affect the economy. We don't own any airlines or anything like that. And so my issue with Blackout Day 2020, first of all, let me say, like I started saying a minute ago, I'm enraged, I'm upset, I'm fed up, I'm saddened. I'm saddened for America. I'm saddened for the family, on and on. Not just for that family, obviously for everybody else who've been victims of hate crimes and all that type of thing. But that being said, that's not going to get it done. Yes, we need to vote. Yes, protesting is, has its place. Rioting is not good. But voting, protesting, Blackout Day, that's not enough. And I'll prove it. When you look at the most successful protest or boycott that involved economics, it wasn't done in a day. It took 381 days for the Montgomery bus boycott, for them to cause them to change laws. What's going to happen? I can tell you from history, just knowing my people, knowing and I don't mean to come across, slamming or hating on people trying to do something positive. I get it. People want some action that's going to have an impact, but we need to really stop and think. If you want to have an impact, it's not going to happen that way, because what's going to happen is We're announcing we're going to do this on July 7th, and we have to do that in order to get enough people involved. But guess who else is listening? The businesses are listening. The corporations are listening. And if I'm a corporation and I know that my business is heavily dependent upon the African American community or those who support it, and let's say I run a restaurant, you know what I'm going to do on July 7th? I'm either A, going to treat it like a holiday and say we're closed so I can cut my losses, or B, I'm going to trim my hours back. I'm going to send some employees, tell some employees not to come in. I'm going to order less food. I'm not going to run my lights and my water as much, or I'm going to find some way to cut my losses because I already know this is coming. And so, and then here's the other problem. Most of us don't really want to sacrifice. We're fed up, but we're really not prepared to sacrifice like they did back in Martin Luther King's day. Here's what I mean. Most of us are going to double down the day or the week before and buy whatever we would have bought. Now, I don't know what day that falls on. Let's just say it's a Thursday. Some of us are going to double down on Wednesday or the week before and buy all the things that we would want to buy on that Thursday, or we're going to double down the day after or the week after. And they're not going to lose. They might take a hit for that day, but they're going to make more money the next day because, oh, well, you know what? I was going to buy these shoes, but I'm not going to buy them because it's blackout, day 2020. And then guess what? You're going to go, it was Thursday, so now you're going to go buy them on Friday. And they're just going to make, that's not going to work.
So let me say this, Vince, because I think me and you are alike, and we want to do something that's going to work strategically.
Mm-hmm.
But you just spent a lot of time saying like why it wasn't going to work. So you've obviously given that a lot of thought.
Yes.
So have you given this like that much thought into like what to actually do? Right.
Absolutely.
How you solve the problem? So in 1 minute, give me your elevator pitch version of what should be done. I'm hoping you're saying in conjunction with.
Yes.
That mission. So you got 60 seconds. Give it to me.
All right. So stop going to the casino. Stop playing the lottery. Pull your money out of the banks and put them in black banks. Take your money out of the stock market. These are heavy hit, multi-million, multi-billion institutions that will hit the systematic oppressors who are living off of the African-American dollar who has built this country. So we all know that we represent 13 to 14%, but we spend more than 13 to 14% of into the economy. But we don't want to sacrifice going to the casino. We want to play our lottery, but we don't want to sacrifice. We can go to the grocery store. I'm not saying that we stop doing the things that we need to do. Go to the grocery store, but do you want to sacrifice enough to mash out your own hamburger, or must you go to the drive-thru? How bad do you want change? Because I guarantee you, and I'll end with this, when they started doing that bus boycott, they were so outdone that they were losing so much money. They physically, because of the culture of that day, started beating people when they were getting those cabs that they had created. They were beating people because they were mad they weren't taking the bus. That ain't gonna fly today. That ain't gonna fly today. So that tells you they want to be on their knees. Put them on their knees when you hit that economy with billions and billions of dollars. And one more quick thing. We just went through 3 months of going without things we thought we couldn't go without. Why can't we go without 3 months doing this? 3 months without going to the casino, buying lottery tickets and all of that.
Those are great points. I mean, I won't argue with them. I think that I do everything that you said on that box. I do. So like, I'm assuming that you do already, because I don't think you would issue that challenge without it. Now it's on you to figure out a way to mobilize, and I think your show is already going to do that. Hopefully some people heard that, but I'd be interested to see what the follow-up looks like. What days do you do your show?
Right now, because of this, I'm just doing it. I try to do it on Fridays at 8 p.m. I'm going to do one tomorrow talking about this exact thing, 8 p.m.
So you can catch Vince Elliott solving all the problems of what we should do.
Where can they find you?
Yeah, where can they find you, Vince?
They can find me, The Vince Elliott on YouTube, The Vince Elliott on YouTube. And then on my Facebook page, I'm under Vincent Yarbrough. And you'll see it live. It'll say, Vince Live with Vince Elliott is the name of the show, Live with Vince Elliott. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining.
I appreciate the time.
For giving your perspective. We appreciate it.
All right.
Peace.
Yeah, I think the analogy that I've been thinking about with this is that I view like protests, for instance, and even what he's talking about there as the wedding. Like we're going to spend a lot of energy on the wedding, but like the marriage is where the real thing gets walked out. And I think that's we have to be having that conversation. Part of what he said reminded me of the Lil Wayne clip too that you had sent to me, which I do want to play. I'm just going to go ahead. We don't have the capacity to just play that, do we, Ralph? Yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a bootleg style in a minute and just show you my screen in front of me, because I do want to. Some of what he said, just kind of hinted at some of the things that Lil Wayne had said about it. But I think so. There's multiple things. I'm curious about what you thought about some of what he said, Dewan, because on the one hand he's talking about proving a point, which I get. But on the other hand, like, why not just on JP? Like, why not just go back to the Black Star ideology that Garvey was pushing? Like, let's because you see so much of like a lot of the problem in places like Detroit is economy, right? So we're spending our dollars at Amazon and we're not supporting the person up the street. And I know you're doing a lot of work with businesses and local, things to do that. Let me plot. Okay. So if you guys, so Dewan runs an organization called Black Leaders Detroit, and he can talk about the website, but like, this is one of the ways you can sow into the local economy. What they've been doing through the pandemic is giving business owners like little stipends. Like the government said they were going to do a lot, and a lot of people that were counting on that, like as from a business perspective, like that money was gone like as soon as it got to the table. And so they've been doing stuff to give. So I want you to talk about that a little bit. But why not just Black Star just because? You know what I'm saying? Why not spend money locally just because? Just to support the local economy, just to strengthen Detroit, just to strengthen LA, just to strengthen the places where Flint. You know what I'm saying? What were your thoughts on some of that?
So there's a bunch of things that he said, and like for the sake of like ideas, and I love hearing ideas, right? Like I think that Vince spent a lot of time like defining why this wouldn't work, and I think that sometimes it's important to remember that the person that may have called for this may have considered all that and know that they're not getting ready to solve all of the problems with one blow, right? But I think that maybe, like if you can assemble a level of unity to be displayed, that would be a phenomenal starting point, right? So like I'm in agreement with the blackout on the strength of that. Like I'm not going to look for like all the reasons why. And that's why I asked Vince, explain to me what we should do. Right? Now, I'll say this. I love Vince's energy. As he was talking, I was actually coming up with reasons why his strategy would not work. Right? Similar to what he described about the blackout, right? But I think that some of the things that he proposed could be, as I was thinking about the reasons it wouldn't work, we could spend some time tackling those things and tweaking them and presenting something publicly that would be a great strategy. So that's where I'm at with where Vince was. But I don't want to like poke all the holes, discourage anything. But when you mentioned Black Leaders Detroit, right? Like that's the way that me and the team that's been assembled to start Black Leaders Detroit came up with to be an answer and a solution to many of the problems that we see plaguing, our communities, right? And what Black Leaders Detroit is, really quickly, it's a funding vehicle for Black-led organizations, for-profit and nonprofits in the city of Detroit, right? So what we do is we invite people to donate $1 a week, right? And we're looking for 1 million people to do that so that we can raise $1 million a week to fund Black-led initiatives in Detroit. I mean, I love the mentality and the heart behind the protest. I love it.
What's the website?
www.blackleadersdetroit.org. You can go in there and become a member, click that donate button, sign up right away. But I love the heart behind the protest. And I know that like this week, probably more than any week, had us all feeling like I have to do something, right? But I think that we spend a lot of time thinking that we're like our fight is against a person or a people group, right? But it's really a system. And that's why when you see the collection of people that are protesting around the country right now, like that will work, right? If you see people really coming together, fighting against a system, that will work in a way that you'll have to respond. But I think that what we're looking to do with Black Leaders Detroit is fight against that system. And I mean, to be honest, like what we saw on display, if you watch the video, I just saw the pictures, and that was more than enough because I've heard people describe it to me. But what you saw there is like what's happening to the Black business community and the Black-led organizations, thus the Black leaders, which is where most of our power lies as a community. The system has its knee on those necks, the necks of those businesses in a way that like is unimaginable. I spoke to people that it's their job to lend money in the business community. And I heard them say, somebody say, a person in position of power say, look, we've classified so many of them as like high risk. And he's like, we don't even have the data to know if they're high risk because we haven't loaned them any money. Right? So how do we know if they're high risk or not? You know what I mean? So what we're looking to do is solve that problem. We're not going to solve the world's problems. I mean, at Black Leaders Detroit, we just feel like the medicine that our community needs to change the power dynamics, it lies within those business owners, lies within those folks that run nonprofit organizations, and we want to get them the funding so that they can continue to do what they do and bring some of the necessary healing. Thanks for giving me that.
Yeah, I heard a Haitian developer years ago say, all I need is a handshake. And he did. That's all he needed. And he like this is before Newtown or Midtown really popped. Like he was on Ferry Street doing a house at a time and really doing some amazing work. Jason Raju said economic pressure is the most effective tool. So you guys, we could take 1 to 2 more calls, 313-473-0499. Just send a text. We'll send you the Zoom information. We'd love to get a couple more calls before we wrap up. I do want to play this, and Juwan, you can respond to this. Because I didn't prepare ahead of time, we're going to do this bootleg style. I'm going to turn my camera around and let you watch what I'm watching here.
You can't just share it on the screen? Okay, go ahead.
No, I'll just do it this way. Hold on, I think I gotta unmute it too.
Yeah, this is kind of bootleg style.
I'm gonna have to wrap up. Let's see. Here we go. Can you turn this up?
Ralph is gonna kill you. Ralph is like, don't put this on me.
I didn't put it on. I put it on myself. Let me turn my volume up. Make sure I. All right, here we go.
Ralph just gonna end the show on us.
We have to stop viewing it with such a broad view.
On Big George stepping on his neck and all that.
I think when we see these situations, I think we also have to understand that we have to get very specific. We have to get so specific, and what I mean by that, we have to stop viewing it with such a broad view. Meaning, we have to stop placing the blame on the whole force and everybody of such a certain race, everybody with a badge, and we have to get into who that person is, and if we want to place the blame on anybody, it should be ourselves for not doing more than what we think we're doing. We're leaving it at the reason why people always ask me like, why you don't say this, why you don't do that, is because what else am I going to do after that? Some people put a tweet out and they think they did something. There's some people wear a shirt, they think they did something. I mean, what you going to do after that? Did you actually help the person? Did you actually help the family? Did you actually go out there and do something? So if I ain't about to do all that, then I ain't about to do nothing. I pray for you.
You say the follow through is more important than wearing the shirt or talking about it. Is actually
learning. It's actually learning about it. What we need to do is we need to learn about it more. If we want to scream about something, know what we're screaming about. We want to protest about something, know what we're protesting about. Because if we want to get into it, there's a bunch of facts that we think we know that we don't know. So if we want to get into it first, know what we're talking about before we talk about it. Because we scream about things that sometimes they isn't even true.
So you sent that to me. I'm gonna let you you respond first.
So that's very white male of you. You gonna let me? I want to respond. Nah. Nah, that's what's up.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So no. I mean, I just was feeling what he was saying, right? And I like I'm not, a Lil Wayne fan. Like I'm not really familiar with his music. I stumbled across that, and I was like, man, like what he was saying made so much sense, right? I think that oftentimes, and I get it. Like I understand that people have to start somewhere, right? So if you are going to rock a shirt, if you are going to like send out a tweet, you know what I mean? That's cool. But I'm in agreement with him. I'm always asking myself, like, what's the follow-up, right? Like I asked Vince, so what is the solution then, right? And we have to be asking ourselves that. And I just appreciated him pointing that out and saying, if I'm going to do something, I'm actually going to do something. And if I'm going to jump on a movement, I'm going to understand exactly what I'm signing up for and like what this movement is. And I just appreciate like that position and take that mindset and approach to activism, right? Because that's what this is. So what's your thoughts? I'm gonna let you share your thoughts.
You sure?
Go ahead. Got my permission.
This guy, man. So hold on, let me read a note from our backstage person. Tell the people wanting to talk to you that they can post in their Facebook and YouTube pages as well. Can you give me a little more clarity on that? So anyway, so I think what she's saying, I'm not sure what she's saying. So we'll get to that. I think, and we're going to have a lot of conversation right now. In a month or two, when it dies down, I wonder where we're going to be at. If we're going to be back to the America that's like, racism is a big deal when somebody gets killed. Like, that's how we see it. And I think that's what I've been like racking my brain on what next, what now, like what now, because I feel like this is like, there's like this small window of opportunity. And man, what I'm seeing both on social media and the conversations that I'm having, there's people that are open to the conversation now that haven't been before, or have a different perspective on the conversation than they had before. And so I think that it's really important to think about that, because how America is, you see this in Hotel Rwanda when Nick Nolte is talking to Don Cheadle, and he's like, look, man, they're going to like catch this between the news and sports, and they're going to pick up you know what I'm saying? Like, and then it's gone. And so that's what I wonder about is, like, I appreciate him saying like, look, it's not just about a tweet. Like, and you say that all the time. It's not just about sending something out. Like, we have to change. Like, there are some fundamental problems in the way that we think about this stuff, in the way that we operate. And so we have to figure out, we have to do the work to get in there and change it and to do something different. I do want to say too, one of the things that we've been, Dewan and I have been kicking around is doing a training for allies, for people who are interested in continuing the conversations. If people like the way that these kind of conversations are happening, have an interest in that, like we do want to do training. We actually have some training for some organizations coming up that we're going to be doing, but we do want to make some free training available to people who would be interested. So yeah, Angeline is coming on next. Bhagwan.
What's up, man? Oh my goodness, you guys
not
are
on yet?
Real talk.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. But
Angeline, I don't know. Hold on one second. I'm not okay. You're good. She's good, Ralph. All right. Welcome. You are live.
Thanks, Don. Thank you so much. So let me first give my disclaimer. I'm not from the US, so I didn't grow up in an environment that has racial tendencies. But since I've lived here, now I have a family. So the mindset is something that I really have been working on, especially when it comes to my children, because I have 2 boys and a girl, and I'm aware that every morning they wake up with a stripe. I'm aware of that. And one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was have that conversation with my 11-year-old daughter. So she can understand, this is how people see you, but I need you to understand who you are. Just kind of wanted to chime in and kind of piggyback on what Vince said, because I have a marketing background. And one of the things I learned in marketing is, in order for you to get a response, you have to put out a certain bait. And it might sound like you're trying to deceive the individual, but at the end of the day, it's the result you're trying to get. So if you can focus all of the energy on getting that one result, and I'm going to give you an example. So I was having a conversation with my husband today in regards to why it is necessary to have more people of other color walking with us going through this process rather than just us, because at this point we're nuzzled, our hands are tied behind our backs. We only have so much influence that we'll be able to get past to the point where will we even be able to get it through the finish line. So my example is this: so you have a family-owned organization. Everybody in there is family, family, cousins, brothers, sisters, all of that. You have someone who is qualified who wants to get through the door. There's no way for them to get through the door without an endorsement from a family member. And because my background, so I'm from Jamaica, that's why Steve greeted me like that. Being in business, I deal with a lot of different people from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different cultures. And one of the things that I've found is sometimes you have to allow somebody else to be your voice because you're not being listened to. Do you understand what I'm saying? The goal is just to get a solution. That's it. That's the goal. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, a solution. It doesn't matter who gets it. I don't have to get it. As long as it gets done is the point. So if I need somebody else who has that favor to get it to the finish line, and they're willing to do it, then work with them to get it to the finish line. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate change is what you're looking for. Not necessarily I have to be the one to do it, because at the end of the day, you're going to be out of the picture anyway. This is not about us. This is not just about the people who are in the situation. This is not about Blacks. Jews have been persecuted, but their approach to getting out of the situation is so different as well. And one of the other things that came to mind is this. So Steve mentioned earlier that it's a system, right? Well, in order for you to change a system, you got to replace it with another system, which, like Vince said, it's not going to happen overnight. It has to be something that changes or clicks on the inside of us as people of color, to say there are just certain things that I'm going to do and certain things that I'm not going to do, certain things that I'm going to accept, certain things I'm not going to accept. And like you guys, I have trigger points too. Like, I don't like when people call me a minority. That, to me, that's a taboo word. It means you're telling me that I am less valuable than you are. And I've heard it so much that in my mind, I'm going, why are you accepting that? It's almost like what Madea says. It's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. Why am I embracing that if that's not my identity? And at the end of the day, irregardless of who fights for us of another race, we have to get to the point where we decide that there's some things that we're just not going to accept. There's some things that for ourselves that we're not going to embrace. I'm not going to embrace that I am less than you. I'm not going to embrace that you call me something other than what God calls me. So that's my 2 cents in that.
That's what's up. I feel like you gave us $1.50, but I appreciate it. No, that's some really good stuff. Really appreciate that. Thank you for calling. We hope you, we'll call back and share with us in the future. So, yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Do we got anybody else coming in, Ralph? Nope, that's it. Well, we're going to say good night to you. Thank you so much again for calling in. And Steve, you want to give some final thoughts?
Yeah, I do think she said a lot of interesting things, and that's one of the things I've been paying attention to is this idea of allyship. And you have some people who, so Joe Biden comes out and says,
"Oh, you gonna go there?"
That's the context of the conversation that it came off the back of. But I don't even know exactly what he said because I didn't actually hear it. But it's something to the effect like, if you're black, like you should be voting for me. So then, like, I see a video. This girl's like, "Look, we need to stop inviting everybody to the cookout. In fact, like the cookout's canceled. Okay, like we need to just because somebody does something, because I think you get the sense that people are getting like that are getting like a little too loose and comfortable. But there's also this sense like some of that stuff and some other stuff, like there's trust components too. And we've talked about trust has come up a couple different times this evening. And so like that's just part of this conversation is that when I look back at history, Malcolm X came back extremely different person after going to Mecca because he was able to see like, oh wow, like there's a whole host of people that and my like what I've been exposed to, like that's not everybody. And so like his position on the world and allyship thing changed there. The Black Panther Party had white allies. I mean, it's even there's a lot of places and I do want to bring Jeff Leo on soon. Jason Raju, I see you in the comments, man. I would love to have you call in next week to talk about this and just talk about what it means across the spectrum. Sometimes in these conversations we can get so black and white that I think we need to broaden it and say like, look, where's everybody at? What roles do all of us play in this? And also like, what are the other issues? Because when we have these conversations, so I am curious. It looks like my sister's on the line, possibly Jen. So yeah, so this would be our last call. But yeah, I am curious, Dewan, when you think about trust and allyship and those kind of things. She also brought out interior mindset, how you view yourself. There's a lot of interesting things that she brought up, and she also touched on something Hemp said that he had texted. He's like, he wonders how people see him as a black man and his son. There's a lot, there's so much. Yeah. So yeah, wherever you want.
Yeah, we got to get him to actually call in because me and him have a great conversation this morning. And yeah, phenomenal brother, phenomenal mind. So here's my quick version while we're trying to get Jen in. So I spent a lot of time in barbershops talking about all of the issues and things that plague the Black community. And what I started to do about 10 years ago is I started to ask, in the middle of those discussions, I'd say, hey, well, we just talked about all of this stuff, like really passionately. What are we going to do about it? Like the five of us, like what are we going to do something about one of these things that we just defined? And ultimately what I'd hear is the Clippers, right? Like I just heard a bunch of voices talking over each other, like sure that they knew exactly what was wrong. But then when I posed that question, I just hear Clippers, right? And I decided, that I was going to work with whoever like rolled their sleeves up and was ready to put in work, right? And be they like if they're black, if they're white, if they're like whatever, like I was like, it's time out for all these conversations and everybody pontificating about like exactly what's wrong and they know exactly what's wrong, this, that, and the other. Like I only want to talk to people that are going to put in some work, right? And what I do, so my approach is I don't worry about the trust, right? Like I kind of trust people to be people. And I've learned that, like you need to watch all of us, right? Like should none of us get a pass. You should watch black people real closely. You should watch white people really closely. Right? Like if you're working with me, watch me. Keep your eyes on me, right? And I shouldn't take offense to that. Because if I am who I say I am,
that's what I was just gonna ask. Like, are you allowed to even say that?
Yeah, like you watching me shouldn't be a problem, right? Because I'm gonna do what I said I'm gonna do, hopefully. And if I'm not, I hope somebody does catch me, right? So like, I don't worry about trust because that'll take me forever, like finding somebody that I'm willing to work with, right? So what I do is I leave room for grace, anticipating that people are going to like mess up at some point in time. But at the end of the day, like if you're on a football team or any team, right? Like if you're in an orchestra, like somebody's gonna play a wrong note at some point in time, right? Like that doesn't stop the show, right? So like if somebody makes an offense, if somebody does something stupid, right? Like if we can work our way back from that, like let's keep on going, right? Because I'm gonna need that same type of grace, right? Yep. So that's my approach to partnership. That's my approach to allies, and that's it. A lot of people can talk really good. When it's time to like do something, put in some work to bring about some change, like, I hear them turning on Clippers and they ain't even a barber, So.
Yeah, that's good. I think, so one of the things I'll say, I know it's starting to get late for people and some people are starting to shut down. One of the things I want to say is that if you guys have appreciated the conversations and if we encourage you to call in. Like we really do want to hear from you, like in the next, as we continue to have these. But two, we'd love for you to like share this with other people and just like, hit the like buttons and hearts and all that, but also invite people to be part of the conversation. We do think the honest conversations and getting to the places where we've been unable to get that have been off limits, like really digging into those places, are going to have some type of have the potential for healing in some places. How are we looking? Do we have one more person coming on, or nope, no mas? Okay, so yeah, we can wrap it up from here. One.
Yeah, so we started with prayer. I'll say a quick prayer. Lord, there are families that have been impacted by this in a much more direct way than we have. And we know the emotions that we've been dealing with. We know the places that this subject has taken us. And I've personally been all over the place. So I can't imagine what those families are dealing with as the rest of the world really have used these tragedies to like demonstrate and point out some things that have been problems for a long time. But right now, we just want to think about those families and ask that you would comfort them. But I do hope that they feel honored in the response that the world is giving right now. That's all we had to offer. We can't do nothing for them other than that. But I hope that they hear the cries of those that are protesting, saying that we're not going to stand for this. And I hope that they even hear the response to some of the different police forces that are saying, you know what, we stand in agreement with y'all. And then ultimately, Lord, we pray for justice. The justice is served. and that you are somehow glorified through all this craziness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Man, thank you everyone for watching. Once again, can I be honest? Hopefully you feel like there's some transparency here, and hopefully this is giving all of us some things to think about, to look in the mirror before we look out the window. We will be live again next Sunday at 9 o'clock, and we hope that you join us. Peace and love, everybody.
Peace.